Next speaker is Jane Aitchison.
Brothers and sisters, spring has sprung, apparently. Thatcher is dead, and boy, it is time for us to fight back. Yesterday, I heard someone say that they were starting to feel Thatchered out after 5 days of her death. I can tell you it was much worse for those of us who lived through 11 years of her in power. This is set for someone taller than me. We were sick of her all right, but it didn't stop us from fighting. And we defeated her, and didn't that feel great, brothers and sisters? It has been an absolutely fascinating week, hasn't it? Perhaps not as we expected the week of Thatcher's death to be. Certainly not how I'd imagined it. I imagined that when we buried Thatcher, we would bury Thatcherism with her. And sadly, that isn't the case. I felt quite sad when I thought about that on Monday, but I have to say I didn't feel sad for very long. It's been a week for remembering, and boy, we've remembered. We've all exercised our collective memories, and we've remembered how we got here, we've remembered how we fought back, we've remembered that we can win, and we've remembered that you don't have to wait until someone dies to get rid of them. People have absolutely loved it. Even people who were too young, like Alfie on the end there, to remember Thatcher themselves, have listened to the lessons of our history, and they felt inspired, and they've learned too. Watching and listening to hours of historic footage, battles over coal and over industry and over jobs and over apartheid and over women's issues and over war and over privatisation and over the poll tax has given us a real picture of what it was all about. People have seen, many, even those who lived through it, for the first time, a clear analysis of what happened to them in the 1980s, that it was class struggle and that it was class war. And that understanding of what happened to us then is helping people to understand what we need to do to win this time. Living under the coalition government has been terrible, and yes, many people said this morning, perhaps it's been worse even than under Thatcher. When Thatcher came to power in 1979, 1 in 7 British children were living in poverty. When she left power, that had increased to 1 in 3. Under the coalition, that figure is rising again. The gap between rich and poor is bigger now in our society than it was back in the 1970s and 80s. Pay has also been driven down to unprecedentedly low levels. We used to fight for pay rises, now we're fighting against pay cuts. 0 hours contracts, workfare have turned people into virtual slaves. The unions prevented much of that under Thatcher. We need to rebuild union membership to protect workers again today. When the 1979 government won with that iconic dole queue poster saying Labour isn't working, unemployment at the time was just a touch over 1 million. Today it stands over 2.5 million, and yet no effort is being made to create jobs for those people. The only effort that the government are making to reduce the dole queues is by hassling people off benefits for not looking hard enough for jobs that, to be honest, largely don't exist, or making it socially unacceptable for you to claim benefits that you've paid into all of your working lives, or making benefit levels so low that it's almost not worth collecting them. Thatcher's government, as Alan said, hid 2 million people extra on incapacity benefit, and today the condemned government are driving those people off that benefit and into despair. Much has been made this week about power cuts that took place in the 1970s as workers struck to defend their rights. Today, over 5 million people owe over £637 million to the energy companies. They choose between heating and eating. They cut their own power off, and yet there aren't mass protests about that. Thatcher lured people into privatisation. She offered them get-rich-quick schemes, cheap shares in gas and electricity and BT. We all know somebody who bought some of those shares, and maybe they made a few quid out of them at the time. But boy, we've all paid for it many, many times since in massively inflated bills. Council housing was privatised with the right to buy scheme. Now the people who bought those houses watch as their own kids can't get a mortgage or are at the mercy of rip-off landlords who charge them what they like. And the bedroom tax has introduced new levels of insecurity to people's homes that Thatcher wouldn't have even dreamed of doing. Margaret Thatcher was a woman, we've been told this week. Apparently it's true. Much has been made of this, an accident of her birth. She did absolutely nothing for women. The great equaliser for women of her generation and of my generation was that we grew up with a fantastic sense that we could be whatever we wanted to be and we could do whatever we wanted to do. But that wasn't because of people like her, that was because we had access to free, top-class university education. When I left school, I was very lucky. If you were clever enough, you could go to any university in this country for free, no fees. I'm telling you this, a lot of you know this, but amazingly, I've talked to young people this week who go, really, could you? Yes, really you could. And I feel very bad that really you can't now. But also, you got a grant for free board and lodgings, so you could literally go to any university and you were supported. That has been ripped away terribly cruelly from our kids today. This week, Michael Portillo said that Thatcher was actually a moderate. And that was why she never reformed the NHS and welfare in the way that they are now. And in some ways, sadly, it's actually not wrong. What they are doing, attempting to do to us, is now far worse. Why are they getting away with it? Well, Thatcher's legacy was indeed New Labour, created by pulling them onto the middle ground and pulling their teeth out. They are now toothless, they are now gutless. They are so worried about being a protest party, they have stopped providing any level of opposition at all. And that consensus has allowed the Tories to come back and do this to us. Was Thatcher a strong leader? Too right she was. But we beat her. Blair didn't defeat her. He defeated Major. By that point, half the government were knee-deep in sleaze, and some of them were on their way to prison by then. Even Major himself was so deluded, he'd started to think Edwina Currie was an attractive woman. They were a pushover. We defeated Thatcher through protests on the street. We ousted her. She overreached herself with the introduction of the hated poll tax. And that was the final nail in her political coffin. We used to chant, Maggie, 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 out, 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 at every single demonstration. We didn't wait until there was an election in the offing. I think we've forgotten that. We need to chant, Cameron out, Tories out, at every demonstration we go to. You know, Thatcher reminds us that it isn't just death, and it isn't just elections that can rid us of hated politicians. There's a cartoon currently doing the rounds on the internet. It shows Dorothy meeting up with the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion on the yellow brick road. And she says, no heart, no brain, no courage. Oh my God, Toto, they're conservatives. In the last few days, we've remembered them for what they are and what they are trying to drag our society down to. Selfish and greedy, trying to just drag our compassionate society down with hatred like they stirred up in the Philpott case the other week. They are indeed lower than vermin. At the same time, the Labour leaders have appeared on our tellies, statesman-like, remembering the good things about Margaret Thatcher and how apparently the unions needed to change. And normal, decent people have sat in their living room shouting at the telly and saying, remember the good things about Thatcher? Pass me that computer so I can go on and tell you the one good thing about her, and I'll download ding dong, the witch is bloody dead. People are angry. People are very angry. And the government are making catastrophic mistakes. They're overreaching themselves again. £10 million for a funeral isn't just insulting, but it shoots through the lies about austerity and shows that spending is just about choices. The guest list to the funeral that we're paying for is a nightmare of the vilest tax dodgers, racist suppressors. Kill them all! The scum of the earth, but it rubs salt in the wounds that Thatcher created. £10 million when 3 million of us are just one paycheck away from homelessness. £3,750 per MP for them to be recalled to eulogise her. That so-called deceased praise allowance was more than someone on job seekers allowance gets in 1 year. I'm winding up. And we find out that if Miliband had objected to this recall, the Speaker would have agreed with him. Apparently even the Queen is now worried about the scale of the funeral, and yet not a squeak from Labour. There is massive anger there, but there is no appetite to oppose the Tories politically. The role of Unite the Resistance, therefore, is absolutely vital. We've been reminded that protest really does work, and why the Tories hate unions. Because unionised workers are stronger, and they can fight back, and they can win. On Monday, the first breaking news of Thatcher's death said that she died of a strike. Probably, it really did. Probably the most unfortunate typo in history. There was actually a PCS strike taking place that day. But I don't think that we'll appear as the cause of death on her certificate. There will, however, be another PCS strike next week on the day of her funeral. Right. On the mood of resistance that we've all felt all this week, and particularly today at this fantastic conference. Build, unite the resistance. Protest together, strike together, fight to get those Tories out, because together we can win. Thank you.